On today's episode, I'll discuss the top captains in Blackhawks history, plus whether they should go after Yaroslav Askarov.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Just a quick reminder to hit that like button, comment down below, and to subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube, 100% free. Won't cost you anything and really does help me out tremendously. If you're tuning in through an audio platform and you're a daily listener, an everydayer, as we like to call them, and you enjoy what you're tuning into on a daily basis, please make sure to rate and review. That also helps me out tremendously. And last but certainly not least, got to let you know, today's episode is sponsored by FanDuel. Go and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon right now to download America's #1 sportsbook. All right, good afternoon, good morning, depending on when you're listening to this. Thank you, as always, for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. Fun little Monday night recording sesh here. And to kick things off on the show today, a fun little conversation surrounding the top 5 captains in Chicago Blackhawks history. This has been something that we've been doing across the Locked On NHL network here in the month of August. And by the way, I'll also be going through the Locked On NHL network's offseason rankings later on in the week. So make sure to stay tuned for that. But also make sure to go and jump in the comment section. Let me know who you think are the top 5 captains in Chicago Blackhawks history. Make sure to throw them all in order. And then when I go through my top 5 as well, make sure to let me know whether you agree or disagree. Let me know who you think I have ranked too high or too low. And also just a reminder, I have not seen most of these captains actually play in my lifetime. So I'm kind of going off their career accolades, how successful they were as a captain, how respected they were by their teammates and all throughout the league, and then also how impactful they were on just the Chicago Blackhawks franchise. That's how I'm going to shake things up. I'm sure there are people who are going to feel differently about it, although, and again, make sure to let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. But there have been, according to my calculations, 35 captains in the near 100-year history of the Chicago Blackhawks, dating back to 1926. We're creeping up on that 100-year anniversary, which hopefully, with the way the Blackhawks are trending right now, hopefully the team will be competitive for that 100th year anniversary, which will add another special little wrinkle to that season. Connor Bedard will be a little bit more developed. So will some of the other young guys. Hopefully the Hawks will be doing some big spending to have this team where they want in a couple of years down the road for that 100th year anniversary. But yeah, according to my numbers, 35 captains in the history of the Chicago Blackhawks organization. Let's go ahead and talk about the best of them. Starting things out at number 5 for me is none other than Stan Mikita. He was only the captain of the Blackhawks, technically for 2 seasons. Co-captain 1975 to 76 and 1976 to 1977. But he's undoubtedly not only one of the best, if not the best Blackhawk of all time, but also one of the best NHL players, top 100 player for sure. And looking at where he ranks in Blackhawks history, right? Like first in games played, second in goals, first in assists, first in points, first in plus minus, second in game-winning goals, so he was clutch as well. And then the playoff numbers too. He's first in playoff games played, first in playoff points, first in assists, second in goals. That's the only one he doesn't have. Bobby Hall, the Golden Jets, got him beat in that category, but he's a Hockey Hall of Famer, 2-time Hart winner, 2-time Lady Byng winner, and oh yeah, he's also got 4 Art Ross trophies to the category as well, was named to the NHL's first All-Star team, and then of course has that number 21 banner hanging in the United Center rafters. If it's not Jonathan Toews, Patrick Kane, or Duncan Keith as one of the best Blackhawks, as the best Blackhawk of all time, it's probably this man, Stan Mikita. I only have him ranked number 5 because he was technically only the captain or held that title for 2 seasons. If we were just talking about Blackhawks greats, Stan Mikita would not be at number 5. But for me, in terms of Blackhawks captains, I have him at number 5, mostly because of his legacy and what he just means to the Chicago Blackhawks franchise, organization, the city of Chicago, all that jazz. Stan Mikita is a name that'll forever go down in Blackhawks history. So I have Stan kicking things off at number 5. At number 4, I have Pierre Pilote, who was the captain of the Blackhawks from 1961 to 1968, was the man wearing the C when the Blackhawks won the Stanley Cup in 1962, a 3-time Norris Trophy winner, Hall of Famer. Out of his 14 years that he played in the NHL, 13 of them, the first 13 were with Chicago. He had one final stint with Toronto before he ended up calling it quits. But yeah, he was as rock solid on the back end as they come. Didn't miss a game, I believe, for his first 6 NHL campaigns. He's 9th all-time in Blackhawks history in assists, 4th in plus-minus, and then 9th in playoff assists, and 13th in total playoff points. So a legendary resume for Pierre Pilote, a Hall of Famer. He's got his Blackhawks number retired in the rafters as well, rightfully so. I have Pierre Pilote, the captain of the 61-62, the 61 Blackhawks, that brought the Stanley Cup to the city of Chicago. So I have him at number 4. At number 3, I have Chris Chelios, who was the captain from 1995 to 1999. The team made the playoffs in 3 of the 4 years that he donned the C, was a 2-time Norris Trophy winner with the Blackhawks, won 3 in his career, 3 Stanley Cups also to his resume. Unfortunately, none came with the Blackhawks, but was part of that team in the early 90s that really helped bring hockey back to Chicago before ultimately ending up getting traded to the Red Wings. But he's 10th in Blackhawks history in assists, hit 60 points in 4 of the 9 years that he spent with the team, known for being one of the most respected guys, not in Chicago, but around the entire league. Played for 26 years, leads the NHL in playoff games all time. And even though, he had his long stint in Montreal and Detroit, I'd like to think Chris Chelios, even though he didn't win cups with this team, that's really where he got his respect and became a cemented NHL stud with the Chicago Blackhawks. And that was his hometown team, Chris Chelios in Chicago. I think they're synonymous. Even though there was that sour relationship for a long time, it feels like that has came and went. So I have Chris Chelios coming in at number 3. At number 2, I have Dirk Graham, and there might be some controversy over to the fans or to the audience out there over where I have them ranked, but Dirk Graham's captaincy, I think, is as solid as they come behind the man who's at number 1, obviously. Dirk Graham was the captain of the Blackhawks from 1988 to 1995, was the captain of the team that reached the Stanley Cup in 1992 before getting swept to the hands of Jaromir Jagr, Mario Lemieux, and the Pittsburgh Penguins, but also coached the Blackhawks for 1 year. He won the Selke Trophy in 1991, put up a career best 78 points in his first year with Chicago in 1998. 1999, retired as a member of the Blackhawks, and also was the first player of African descent to be named captain in the NHL, which I think is pretty monumental. Out of the 7 years that Dirk Graham captained the Blackhawks, never missed the playoffs, retiring as a Blackhawk. Doesn't have the accolades or the career numbers that the guys that I just mentioned had, but boy, being a leader, especially for a player of African descent to really step onto the scene and be the first, I think that's super notable. And then also, the team was never bad when Dirk Graham was at the helm. So that's why, maybe controversially, I have him at number 2 behind only Jonathan Toews. I don't really think this one is a question. I think Jonathan is undoubtedly the best captain in Blackhawks franchise history, and I'm sure there are folks out there who feel sour about his leadership with the whole Kyle Beach situation, and I definitely don't think Jonathan Toews handled that the best, and even his actions when all that news broke out and kind of some of the stuff he said in the media, I don't agree with whatsoever, but I don't think that can remove the proven leadership abilities that Jonathan Toews displayed game in and game out, on and off the ice for the Blackhawks, for whatever team, whatever level Jonathan Toews was playing at, he was leading them on and off the ice. He was meant to be a leader, and boy, did he do a good job while doing that. Was the captain of the Blackhawks from 2008 to 2023. It still almost feels wrong to say that like he's not the captain any longer, but of course won 3 cups in 6 years before the age of 30. Close it there, and it's a Hall of Fame career. He's probably still the best captain in Blackhawks franchise history, but the team made the playoffs 8 times under his leadership. He ranks 5th in Blackhawks history in games played, 6th in goals, 8th in assists, 6th in points, 7th in power play goals, 3rd in game-winning goals, and then he's 2nd in playoff games behind only Stan Mikita, 5th in playoff points, won the Conn Smythe to help bring the Blackhawks back and snap that 49-year drought in 2010. Also won the Selke, NHL top 100 player. No one's wearing number 19 ever again in a Chicago Blackhawks sweater for very, very good reason. This was an easy one. Jonathan Toews is the best captain in Blackhawks franchise history, and there are so many stories to go through his leadership and just how he could connect with all the guys. He was really born to do that, and I think you can make the argument out of the young captains like a Toews, Connor McDavid, Sidney Crosby. I don't think anyone deserved it as much as Jonathan Toews did. That's just who he was to a T. Captain Serious at 18 years of age, at 35 years of age. He was the same guy who was born to lead, and boy, did he do it on the ice as well. That guy would will his team to victories. I'll still never forget that goal he scored in Game 7, 2011, first round against the Vancouver Canucks. Shorthanded, Blackhawks down 1-0, fighting for their life. Couldn't beat Roberto Luongo all game, and Jonathan Toews wills his way through 3 or 4 defenders to score one of the most unbelievable goals. And for anyone who doesn't follow Brendan Perlini on social media, on YouTube, on X as well, Perlini, now retired from the NHL, has some phenomenal stories that he shares on his channel. One of them was about Jonathan Toews and how great of a leader he was, and how he took the time when he recognized Perlini was down a little bit and pulled him to the side off of the plane and just chatted with him for 25, 30 minutes and told Perlini how important he is. He's got to keep his head up. He's got to keep working. And then little did he know he'd get an opportunity later on in the year with the Blackhawks, even though, Jeremy Colleton didn't really give him many chances. He wound up playing some pretty good hockey, and even when he scored a hat trick on my birthday, which I'll never forget, March 11th, against his former team, the Arizona Coyotes, Perlini told a story about how Jonathan Toews made sure that Colleton and the coaching staff put him back on the ice for that opportunity, and it led to one of the best highlights of Perlini's NHL career. So I think that goes to show you the type of leader Jonathan Toews was. You can make what you want about everything that happened at the end of his tenure. To me, regardless, he's still the best captain in Blackhawks history and one of the best captains and leaders in NHL history as well. That'll never change for me. But let me know what you think about my top 5 rankings. I'll give an honorable mention to Dennis Savard as well, even though he was technically only the captain for 1 season. He obviously left a huge mark on the Blackhawks franchise and organization and really was a spark for this team. So shout out to Savoir-faire, Denny Savard, as always. But let me know, again, what you think of my top 5 captains in Chicago Blackhawks history. I think Jonathan Toews is going to get number 1 by most accounts, but I think numbers 2 through 5 are really up for debate. So again, let me know your reaction to that down in the comment section. But there are my thoughts on the top captains in Blackhawks history. We're going to take a break here, but coming up in just a moment, I'll discuss whether the Blackhawks should go after Predators goaltender Yaroslav Askarov. But first, I got to talk to you all about the fine folks over at FanDuel. You've all heard about FanDuel by now, right? Of course, but now we have something a little bit different for you. Right now, through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a free 3-week trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV, which sounds like an amazing deal. And then With a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game. You won't be stuck with just the Bears, which actually might not be the worst thing in the world this season. Going to keep my fingers crossed on that front, but be sure to go and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon right now. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime, anywhere. I'm just waiting for FanDuel to drop those Frank Nazar Calder Trophy lines. They got to be coming out sometime soon, regardless of the number, regardless of how far-fetched it is. I got to ride with my boy Frank the Tank, and you can tail me by visiting FanDuel.com/lockedon. Again, that's FanDuel.com/lockedon to go and download America's #1 sportsbook. Back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Again, a quick reminder to smash the like button, comment down below, and subscribe to the Locked On Blackhawks YouTube channel to stay all caught up on Blackhawks news throughout the offseason and into training camp, which is just about a month away. And also, make sure to go and check out the new Locked On Sports Today, because Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts from Locked On. Plus, we have our national shows that cover every single league. So make sure to go and check out Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and to subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Segment 2, an interesting NHL tidbit that got thrown out into the ether earlier today from none other than the man Kevin Weeks himself. Not the most surprising news, however, as young Nashville Predators goaltender Yaroslav Askarov, one of the top goalie prospects, been one of the top goalie prospects since being drafted 11th overall in 2020 by the Nashville Predators, has officially requested a trade from Nashville. And this was kind of brewing. This was something we had seen coming a little bit since the Predators, of course, had themselves an offseason, maybe the best offseason of any team out there. Not only getting Marchessault, Stamkos, they give Yossi the extension. They're looking really, really solid, and actually made an aggressive move in free agency. Moves, plural, for the first time in franchise history. They also locked up UC Saros, franchise goaltender, so it seems, based on the way that he's performed over the last several years, locked him up to an 8-year deal. But not only did they do that, they also gave Scott Wedgwood a 2-year deal to be their backup, despite having one of the top goalie prospects in all of hockey. And this didn't seem to really sit right with Yaroslav Askarov, and I understand, because he's put up some unbelievable numbers in the AHL, which I'll get to here in just a second. We saw the first little breadcrumb of potential trade request coming immediately after Saros signed that extension and Wedgwood got signed. When the Predators had themselves a hell of a July 1st, we saw Askarov take to Instagram and say everything happens for a reason. So we got a little bit of an idea there that, these two, Askarov and the Predators, not really seeing eye to eye right now. And then we get the announcement today that not only has he requested a trade, but he will not report to the Milwaukee Admirals training camp, as it looks like if he stays with Nashville, he's slated to go back to the AHL with Milwaukee, where he's really proven himself, doesn't really have anything left to prove at that level, and seems more than ready to take that next step. And based on him being a highly sought-after goalie prospect before even coming to North America, I'm still astonished that he wasn't the first goaltender off the board. Sebastian Cossa, I'm sorry. This is the wrong draft. I'm thinking of Jesper Wallstedt with the Minnesota Wild. Still can't believe he wasn't the first goaltender off the board, but he's widely considered to be one of the best goalie prospects in the world, along with this man, Yaroslav Askarov. And the Blackhawks, if you remember, were one of the teams trying to move up from number 17 to potentially take this kid. They ended up staying home. They select Lucas Reichel. Askarov was never going to make it to 17. He gets selected 11th by the Predators, and since then, he's really done nothing to have his stock go down. There are going to be a lot of teams looking after this kid for a couple of different reasons. One of them being the success he's racked up in the AHL, which, by the way, he's still only 22 years old, which for a goaltender is unbelievably young and early in the process for most of them. However, he's already shown that he probably is ready for the NHL level. In the AHL, the last 2 years, he's amassed a 56-29-6 record. And oh, by the way, he just turned 22 in June. So this has mostly been as a 20 and a 21-year-old. Again, really impressive stuff for a goaltender at that age. This past year, he had a 2.39 goals against, 911 save percentage, and 6 shutouts in 44 games for the Admirals. And in his first year in North America playing pro hockey over here, didn't really seem like there was any learning curve or anything. 2.69 goals against, another 911 save percentage, along with 4 shutouts in 48 games during his first year in North America. He played 2 NHL games with the Preds last year, had a 1.47 goals against and 943 save percentage, albeit in only 1 start and 1 game of relief appearance. But yeah, the numbers look really solid. And oh yeah, there's tons of team control on Yaroslav Askarov as well at a very cheap number. I believe he's still 4 or 5 years. I believe if a team were to acquire him, he would still be under their control for 5 seasons at a cap hit less than $1 million. So a very cheap young goaltender that could plug in. I don't know if he's ready to be a starter right here, right now, but in 2 or 3 years down the road, that could be one of the best contracts in all of hockey, not even just for one of the goaltenders, but for the upside this kid has and for what he's shown already at his age. Yeah, there are a lot of reasons he's going to be super sought after. And the question that leads me to now is, should the Chicago Blackhawks go after Yaroslav Askarov? Yes, absolutely. 1,000%. I know they already have Drew Commesso, who I'm super high on. I believe he's going to be the goalie of the future, along with Adam Guyan, who is still a handful of years away. Didn't have the strongest year in the USHL, but still very young. It's going to be a long process for him. We don't really know what we have with Adam Guyan, to be quite honest. Even with those two guys, you don't get an opportunity to get a goalie prospect like this, who's so highly touted and has been highly touted for a long time. Those guys just don't grow on trees, right? And I love Drew Commesso. Yaroslav Askarov is undoubtedly the better goalie prospect than Drew Commesso. So yes, the Blackhawks should absolutely be kicking the tires, should be doing their due diligence and find out what exactly the asking price is that Nashville wants for this kid. Could the Blackhawks make it feasible? Yes, they absolutely have to be kicking the tires. However, the first thing I will say is I highly doubt that the Nashville Predators would like to trade Askarov to the Chicago Blackhawks so he can burn them for years to come. And that's why we don't see a lot of interdivision trades. Not to say that it doesn't happen, but even just think about it. When's the last time the Blackhawks traded with another Central Division team? Like the Dallas Stars with that? It just doesn't happen very often is the point that I'm getting to. And it's not out of the realm of possibility. And the Blackhawks, with, all the prospects and the picks that they've accumulated, they certainly could make an enticing offer to the Nashville Predators front office. However, it would have to absolutely wow them, I think, for them to make a move like this, to trade Askarov to a divisional team. And that's just, I just don't know if that's going to transpire. I think that's a wrinkle in the plans. We've already heard the San Jose Sharks, rumored to be, I believe, the Columbus Blue Jackets as well, to be among the teams potentially interested in Askarov, and it's going to be a super high price. Yes, the Blackhawks have picks, they have high-end prospects, but there were rumblings that maybe the Predators were trying to move Askarov in order to get the 5th overall pick from the Montreal Canadiens in this year's draft, right? And, that's a pretty high-end pick, not quite as deep as the 2023 draft, but that's a pretty steep price that they were asking for him. And while now leverage is not going to be in their side and there's not really a path for Askarov to ever be the guy here in Nashville, other teams are going to know that. It's going to be a high-bidding market still because of this kid's talent, because I think there are so many teams that could use a goalie of his caliber, right, at that cheap price tag. I just think it's tough to envision it being the Chicago Blackhawks as the final destination here. But it could happen. Kyle Davidson should absolutely be figuring out what the price tag is. A goalie with the upside like Yaroslav Askarov does not grow on trees. As far as the likelihood the Blackhawks getting this done, though, very, very slim to none. I would not anticipate them being among the most likely destinations. But hey, you never know. We'll see if there's any more updates on this situation. We'll see if we get any more weak-sea bombs throughout the course of the week following the Yaroslav Askarov situation. But there are my 2 cents on whether the Blackhawks should pursue him, which they absolutely should. Will they end up landing him? Probably not. But there's my thoughts on the matter. Coming up in just a moment, after we take a break, I still have to break down Wrigley Field hosting not only the Winter Classic this winter, but Big Ten hockey as well. But first, I need to talk to you all about Indeed. We're driven by a search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search. Match with Indeed. And if you need to hire, then you need Indeed, because Indeed is the best matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates in an instant. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire. 93% of employers agree that Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. And one of the things that I personally love about Indeed is that it makes hiring all in one place so simple and easy, because you can skip out on the countless job sites that ask unnecessary information that you don't want to give away, and it still winds up leading you nowhere. Go and join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that currently use Indeed to hire great talent in an instant. And listeners of this show, you'll get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility by checking out Indeed.com/lockedon right now. Again, that's Indeed.com/lockedon to get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility. Need to hire? Then you need Indeed. Real quick, just wanted to say thank you again for making Locked On Blackhawks your very first listen here to start off your day. And a reminder to be on the lookout for a discussion around Patrick Laine being dealt to the Montreal Canadiens earlier this afternoon. That'll be topic number 1 on the next episode that I'm dropping, so make sure to be on the lookout for that. And also be sure to go and check out the new Locked On NHL podcast, where the season never ends, providing national expertise with a local perspective. You can find the link to Locked On NHL down in the description, or simply search on YouTube or wherever you may be listening to your podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, before I wrap things up, segment 3, I did want to mention, not only are we going to see Wrigley Field serve as the host of the Winter Classic for the second time between the Chicago Blackhawks, or the third time, actually, between the Chicago Blackhawks and the St. Louis Blues, but Wrigley Field will also be the site for a pair of college hockey doubleheaders after the Winter Classic. It was announced late last week, which I think is super cool. And in all honesty, with the prices of the Winter Classic, I don't know if I'll actually be in attendance for that game, which, as I broke down on Mailbag Monday last week, if you are planning on going to the game, higher isn't the worst thing in the world in a situation like this. Don't forget the 100 level. Yeah, they're great seats, great atmosphere. You can't really see over the wall to follow the puck, and you end up spending most of the time watching the game on the Jumbotron, which, if you pay the money that you did to get a seat like that, you probably don't want to be watching on the Jumbotron. So just one thing to keep in mind. But going back to what I was saying with the prices of the Winter Classic being outrageous, understandably so, I likely will not be in attendance for that one. I'll probably be mingling around in Wrigleyville with some of my buddies, maybe 2 or 3 cocktails deep. But I do plan on going to one of these college hockey games that are announced after the Winter Classic is going to be played on December 31st. Again, a reminder, New Year's Eve, not New Year's Day this year, which I think is so much better. I believe the game is 2 p.m. Central Time on New Year's Eve. So if you have New Year's plans, you can still go to the game. You can still watch. It doesn't throw a whole fork in your day like some Blackhawks games in the past have on New Year's Eve, which have made me a little bit annoying. But anyways, after the Blackhawks play the Blues on December 31st, the Frozen Confines Big Ten Hockey Series, as it has been dubbed, will have 3 men's games and 1 women's game a couple of days after the NHL teams battle on New Year's Eve. Penn State versus Notre Dame and Ohio State versus Michigan will be played on January 3rd, and then Wisconsin will take on Michigan State on January 4th. And then to close things up, a pretty epic battle in women's college hockey is the defending national champion Ohio State Buckeyes will play Wisconsin on January 4th. Those two teams have combined for the last 5 NCAA titles in women's college hockey and have met in each of the last 2 title games. So probably some bad blood between those two sides. A good way to close this series off. Unfortunately, this happens after all the Blackhawks prospects leave these teams, right? Like, think of all the Blackhawks prospects we've seen at Notre Dame over the years, and Frank Nazar at Michigan these last few seasons as well, right? Or if Artem Levshinov had gone back to Michigan State, it would be cool watching him in Rockford. Would have been pretty sick to see him on Wrigley Field representing the Spartans, right? It's like, of course, right when the Blackhawks get rid of these slew of college prospects at these pipelines that they've had for years on end, of course, they're no longer there. But regardless, all of those teams have been powerhouses in men's college hockey for years on end, right? All of those teams were inside the top 20 in the season-ending rankings last year in college hockey. Michigan went on to qualify for the Frozen Four. Unfortunately, had their national championship dreams cut short, which made me sad for Frank Nazar, although I'm never really upset about Michigan losing personally. But yeah, should be a lot of fun, should be a good atmosphere, and I think kind of only makes sense to give these college kids an opportunity like that, continuing to grow the game. And I think it's just a cool, fun atmosphere. And man, I'm sure the families of the kids on the team, it's going to be incredible for them at Wrigley. And like I said, I think these are probably going to be the cheaper, more affordable options to go and see some fun hockey games at Wrigley Field. So I'm certainly excited for it. I know there aren't going to be probably these Frozen games at Wrigley every single year, but I think it would be also cool to have them implemented in the college game and give these college kids, especially for how talented these kids are at a young age and how good the game is at the college level. Yeah, I think it's a natural transition to let them have some more outdoor games as well. Excited to see how this is going to go at Wrigley Field in the winter, as well as the Winter Classic for the Blackhawks against the Blues. Hopefully our Hawks show out better than they have in the last handful of Winter Classics. But that's going to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks, everyone. As always, thank you all again for joining me on the show. Be sure to go and follow Locked On Blackhawks for free right now, wherever you may be listening to your podcast, and to subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. You can ring that bell to turn on push notifications. If you want to follow me on X, you can find me at Jack Bushman too. Check out Talkin' Hockey as well for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. So until the next episode, everyone be on the lookout. Fun discussion coming about Patrick Laine being dealt to Montreal and whether the Blackhawks missed out on that opportunity. I'll share my full thoughts on the next episode. Until then, everyone enjoy the rest of your nights. I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every